Good morning, class.
Morning.
Hi, sir.
How are you feeling today?
Good. Oh.
Okay, basically, I will assign you to assignment. So, this is your question. Inflation is best controlled by using monetary policy, while the unemployment can only be resolved through fiscal policy. Do you agree?
Huh?
Disagree.
Sorry, sir. I got it.
Well, since you all disagree, go home and do more research about it, and the due date is next week. Class dismissed.
Monetary policy, fiscal policy. I can go ask lecturer. So can I ask you questions?
Sure.
I want to know what is monetary policy.
Monetary policy is the action of central bank or other regular committee that determines the size and rate of growth of money supply, which is turn in effect interest rate, and it is maintained throughout actions such as increase in the interest rate or changing in bank reserves.
Oh, then how about fiscal policy?
Fiscal policy is also defined as the government can increase taxes and cut the spending. This improves the budget situation and help reduce the demand in economic.
I still don't know how to do. I think I can find Eileen. Eileen, can you teach me how to use fiscal policy and ADAS diagram to solve the inflation?
We believe that inflation can be resolved through fiscal policy by using money market and ADAS diagram. So when government using fiscal policy, the transfer payment will decrease and the taxes will increase, and the government expenditure will also decrease. So looking at the money market diagram, the intersection of money supply and money demand curve is the equilibrium of money market, point A. So when government use fiscal policy, real wealth of consumer will decrease, and this will cause transaction demand for money decrease. Hence, money demand will shift to leftward to MD1 at the interest rate of I1. So in that situation, there is a surplus in the money market because the money supply is greater than money demand. So banks start to loan out more financial assets, and such as bonds and securities. So this will increase the asset demand for money. Thus, price of money will increase. So in order to let bank to sell out fixed amount of coupon, they have to decrease interest rate. Hence, the interest rate will fall from I0 to I1. Besides that, we also can use AD and AS diagram to solve inflation. So looking at figure 1, it is the aggregate expenditure and aggregate income diagram. And figure 2 is the aggregate demand and aggregate supply diagram. These two figures illustrate the long-run effect of an increase in interest rate. Initially, in figure 1, the aggregate expenditure is at AE0 and equilibrium expenditure is at Y0 point A. And in figure 2, the aggregate demand is at AD0 and the short-run aggregate supply curve is SAS0. Equilibrium is point A where the AD and SAS curve intersect. Now the interest rate has increased. This results in a decrease in real wealth of consumer. Hence, with price level fixed at P0, the aggregate expenditure curve will shift downward from AE0 to AE1. At the same time, equilibrium expenditure decreased to Y1 point B. While in figure 2, the aggregate demand curve shifts leftward from AD0 to AD1, and it changed the equilibrium point from point A to point B. But with this new aggregate demand curve, AD1, the aggregate demand is actually less than aggregate supply, and this creates a surplus in the market. In this situation, firms will eventually cut down their production and decrease the price level. Hence, price drop from P0 to P1, and as it does, real wealth of consumer will increase from Y1 back to YF, and the aggregate expenditure curve will shift upward from AE1 to AE2. The inflation gap is now eliminated, and the economy back to full employment, and market equilibrium is now at point C.
Oh, how about monetary policy to solve unemployment?
I also don't know. I think we can go go and ask someone else.
What? Have you finished your assignments?
Done already, why? Done already. Can you teach us how to use monetary policy to solve the unemployment? Oh, very easy.
We do not agree because we think that the expansionary monetary policy can also solve employment. Expansionary monetary policy shows that when increased the supply of money, people will buy more goods and services. As the business cycle expansion gets underway, real wealth will increase and people will buy more assets as well. Therefore, it shifts the money supplies from money supply 0 to money supplies 1, and the interest rate will decrease from interest 0 to interest 1. When the interest rate decreases, the amount of investment increase with the movement along the MD, which point A move from point B. So people will save less and consume more. At the same time, consumption will decrease. Now I will talk about the effect of an interest rate decrease that influences the graph of aggregate income and aggregate expenditure, and also the graph of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Figure 1 shows that the vertical line is labeled as aggregate expenditure and horizontal line labeled as real GDP. The equilibrium condition is denoted in figure 1 by the diagonal 45-degree lines labeled as y equal to AE. Figure 2 shows that the aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve inclination model. The vertical line is represented as price level and the horizontal line is represented as real GDP. The increase in interest rates will cause a decrease of the consumption and investment increase from AEO to AE1. This means that the firm will increase the production. When the demand bigger than supply, shortage will occur. Multiplier effect will take place in YO to Y1 and causes the AD curve shift rightwards from ADO to AD1. During the shortage, price will increase. Real wealth effect will decrease as decrease in consumption. Higher price level will lead AE1 drop to AE2. The purchasing power of household decrease due to the changes in price will cause a movement from point B to point C. Thus, the triggering of a multiplier fall in GDP from Y1 to YF. A short-run equilibrium move from point B to point C, where the new AD intersect the short-run AS. New equilibrium occurs in point C. The unemployment gap is now eliminated and hits the full employment at LAS curve.
So everything alright? Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you, we understand already.
Thanks.
Okay.